Okay, it is now 7 p.m. on Thursday, July 26, 2018. I call a meeting of the Bellevue Planning Commission to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll do roll call attendance.
I know. Give me a second.
Yeah, but then when they vote, it's not going to come up that way. Why is this roll call? Yeah, but I'm saying when they vote, just go ahead and do a roll call.
Madden, Perrin,
Here.
Kane, here, Baumgartner, Jacobson,
Here.
Ackley,
Here.
Casey, Ritz,
Here.
Smith.
We have a quorum. Our next item on our agenda is the Open Meetings Act. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a copy of which can be found in the hallway of the hearing room. At this time, I would ask that all commissioners and audience members, please remember to silence or turn off your cell phones or any other electronic devices that could disrupt our proceedings. Please note the immediate emergency exits are behind you. We'll exit directly out that door for most emergencies. If you have a health problem, wave your hand so we can get some help to you. The restrooms, fire extinguishers, and AED are out that door and around the corner. And if you see any signs or need any stress, again, wave. In the event of severe weather, which I hope is behind us this week, the restrooms out that way, you can follow us to the designated shelter. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the approval of our minutes of May 24th. It was a regular meeting. I'd entertain a motion to revise or approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Motion to approve is written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? Seeing none, please vote.
We are having some issues with
Chris, can
the
you
system.
Not to worry.
get these out of here?
I thought I was in the follow along mode, which
Yeah, should have.
Ms. Kane, was it this quiet when you were teaching in the classroom?
Not exactly, Mr. Ackley.
That's a bad spot to be in with a public meeting on this stuff doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah,
Thankfully, we don't have a full house.
yeah. You know, technology is always challenging.
Sarpy County Planning Commission started having a deputy sheriff sit back in for the meeting.
For those of you that are online and watching, we're having a technical issue, so bear with us.
Friday night was quieter than it should have been for how nice the weather was. Saturday was a good crowd all night. Lots of beer drinking going on. I was selling tokens, so I was well aware. That was good. A lot of bugs with the flooding down there, but bug spray took care of that. No. Did you get down there at all? Yeah.
We'll do a roll call. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote to approve the minutes. We have a motion and a second.
Okay, and could we have who the motion was by, please?
Ackley for motion.
And the second?
Barron.
Okay. Okay, and let's do a roll call vote. Perrin,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Yes.
Ackley, Ritz.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is to accept into record all staff reports, attachments, memos, and handouts regarding each application. At this time, I'd accept all those attachments, records. Any updates, staff?
There are not.
Staff, do we have a motion and a vote? Motion
I
and
move
second.
to accept all, into the record all staff reports,
Motion by Ms. King.
attachments, etc.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote again.
Yes, please. Perrin,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Ackley,
Yes.
and Ritz.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is our consent agenda. We have no items on our consent agenda this evening, so we'll move on to our public hearings. We have 3 items on our public hearings this evening. One is actually a discussion, so we'll work through that with the rules. But in general, I will announce each case, ask if there are any updates from the planning department. After that, the applicant will have an opportunity to present their request. After the applicant has been heard, the public will be allowed to provide any testimony they would like to be considered in the record. Those testifying should come to the podium, state and spell out their name and address, and sign in for the record, please. Testimony should be limited to 3 minutes, and I reserve the right to shorten that time or lengthen it depending on the discussion. If we have a large number of people coming to testimony, I will stay with the 3 minutes. After any testimony is taken, the applicant shall have an opportunity to further discuss this at the request of any of the commission members. And that may include requests for clarifications, other discussion points, as well as making a motion to approve or disapprove, at which time that'll be followed by a second. After the second is made, I will limit any discussions to clarifications of the motion. Our first request is a request to amend sections 5.22, 23, 24, and 26 of the City of Bellevue zoning ordinance regarding exercise fitness and tanning spa as a permitted use. The applicant is the City of Bellevue. You've signed in, I guess. Chris,
Yes.
are you representing the City of Bellevue?
Yes, I am. This comes from the planning department. We are currently dealing with at least one fitness center that's coming in. And we do realize we have in the zoning ordinance that a definition for exercise, fitness, and tanning spas that would fit this business, but that definition is not listed as a permitted use in any of the zoning districts. So we are proposing to allow it in the BG, BGM, BGH, and Flex zoning districts. I think other ones that have been in, we do have a indoor recreational facility that is similar, that we would have probably allowed the other ones to come in as a permitted use, but this clears it up for new businesses that are that type of fitness center. You have to answer any questions or take a public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. Before I open it to public comment, one question for the commissioners. I have not pulled up the article on the screen. Do you need to see that displayed, or can you pull it up on your own?
We can all pull it up on their own.
Okay, great. Okay, at this point in time,
Now you gotta go back to this. 'Cause
we
they
will
moved
close the hearing from Chris for a moment and open it up to public. If anybody's interested in making comment, either for or against, now's the time to step up to the podium and sign in and sign your name. Seeing nobody coming forward, we will close the public hearing and open it up to the commissioners for comment. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Thanks.
There's no discussion. I'd be prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
Recommend approval of the change to the language with regard to exercise fitness and tanning spa as permitted use in sections 5.22, 5.23, 5.24, and 5.26 as presented in the zoning ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Perrin,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Ackley,
Yes.
and Ritz.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carried.
Great, thank you. Our next item on our agenda is a request to amend Article 7, City of Bellevue zoning ordinance regarding digital signs. The applicant is the City of Bellevue.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Again, this is an amendment being brought forward by the planning department. The sign regulations currently deal with digital billboards only. They don't really pertain to just a regular on-premise or off-premise sign. There are some guidelines in there regarding the motion or animation that's allowed with the sign or not allowed, how often they can change, and how bright they can be. And that, again, applies specifically to billboards. We would like these to apply to other digital signs as well, although we have been, when dealing with sign companies, passing those same regulations onto them for these digital billboards, or not billboards, just digital signs on or off premise. And then also, we're proposing allowing them in the BN and BNH district, as well as the institutional uses, as shown on the amendment table 7 that you have tonight. And go ahead and open for public hearing. We can ask questions later.
Okay, we'll now open the hearing to public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that would like to testify either in for or against, or has some additional information? Please step forward, state your name, and sign in. Address as well.
Councilman Pat Shannon. I live at 3417 East Dutchman Circle in Bellevue. As I looked at the proposed changes to paragraph C of the ordinance here, two things jumped out at me that I wanted to share with you tonight. The first is, I think we probably need to cut this in two and address static outdoor digital signs and mobile outdoor digital signs and have a separate set of rules for each. We've got these 20-foot trucks roaming around Bellevue. The whole side of the truck is a sign, and you're going to see more of these as these become less costly for people to buy. And so I think we need to have one section addressing static signs and one section addressing mobile signs. That way it's clear which rules are for the static signs and which rules are for the mobile signs. So that was my first thought that jumped out at me as I read this. The second one, and this is just an overall comment for regulation writing. I think sometimes we overcomplicate regulations to the point of making them unenforceable and uncompliable. And this is a prime example where you start putting nits in here and saying you can't exceed this nit or that nit. If the intent of the commissioners tonight is that you want outdoor digital signs that are automatically dimming, then just say that, please. These signs run up to 10,000 nits. There is no way that you can regulate how many nits are displayed at any given time. Nit is a rating of 1 cubic meter with the sign on pure white. Okay? The signs don't run that way. All right? We don't have equipment to measure that. We don't have people capable of measuring it. So we're creating something that you can't enforce. You're creating something nobody could comply with. So if you want an automatically dimming sign, then ask for it. And that's what I'd ask you to do with this regulation. And just as a side note, I started calling some of the sign people that I work with on a regular basis and asking questions about these digital signs. And what I learned was that for the last 2 decades at least, all of these outdoor signs, if they're proper UL rated outdoor signs, are auto dimming. And it's not because they don't want to be too bright at night. It's because the way they function is fighting with the sun all day. And they have 50 to 60 levels of adjustment within these signs that they're automatically going throughout the day as the direct sunlight is hitting the sign to keep them readable. So the industry's already there. So if you just make sure that you say auto dimming and that they have to use outdoor signs outside, you'll have compliance with what we were trying to do without specifying numbers that we can't enforce. I did ask a industry expert to come here tonight so that you guys could have an expert to talk to if you had questions, or she could share her thoughts with you on sign regulations in general. We've got Miss Brittany True from Vital Signs. I asked you to come up. Sign in.
And if you would speak your name and
You bet. Good evening. My name is Brittany True.
thanks.
Address is 23319 Council Bluffs, Iowa, 51503.
Great, thanks. So we're open to any comments that you may have on signage and sign technology
Sure.
with regards
So
to this.
thank you for the introduction, Pat. I'm just here as kind of a technical person that has been within the industry for 9 years. I've been hands-on with these digital signs, so I'm familiar with the hardware. I'm familiar with the sales process, the permitting process with the different cities locally. I'm familiar with the industry. I'm familiar with the hardware. I'm familiar with the different types of manufacturers and how their different control systems are. Some are proprietary, some are more than, there are more proprietary manufacturers than there are open source. So I'm familiar with the different types of softwares. I've worked with all different manufacturers. The different levels of the manual brightness settings, the scheduled brightness settings, as well as the automatic brightness sensors. I'm just here to offer the industry perspective that there's also resources available. There is the International Sign Association. They are massive within the industry. They put on a lot of information to reach out to. Especially their website provides a lot of case studies, not to mention other sign codes that could be referenced. So though this is new to the city of Bellevue to regulate, to manage, it's not for the industry. So there's resources available to reach out to help guide and help this process, because yes, it should be managed. I'm sure the planning department works with a lot of complaints with brightness and all that type of things, and you do have to hone in and create a basis. So I would just be my recommendation to reach out to the resources available to get you to a really solid implementation, like Pat had said, that's put within the ordinances, something that you can regulate and manage. That's not over the moon. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just wanted to add one thing. The group she's referring to actually has templates for signed ordinances for municipalities, and they've done this for cities and counties all over the country. So if you guys want to put the brakes on this and go look at some templates for what the industry has written, they're out there already. They've written these for all the other cities and counties, and they're available to be looked at. So there's some great examples out there that would help the process.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we may ask you to step up to the microphone in a few minutes.
Sure.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to make comment on this, either for or against, or clarifications? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to the commissioners for additional discussion. Okay,
As the applicant, I'm going to comment on a couple things Mr. Shannon said. It is our understanding from the police department that the mobile signs are illegal to drive around and change the sign. I know they have stopped the ones in Bellevue a few times. So they are not permitted either in our sign ordinance, because our ordinance basically deals with signs on private property. State statutes, according to the police department, prohibit the mobile changing signs. So the police can handle those as just being illegal at this time. I'd like to ask Ms. True, is there,
if you would step up to the microphone again. Told you.
I'm back.
based on your experience, is there a way to objectively measure the brightness of a sign to say, yes, that's in violation, no, it's not in violation?
Yes.
And can you explain how to do that to us?
Sure. So it's a little technical. There are devices. It actually gets very technical. The ISA does recommend, it's a mouthful, but I could look at and reference it. But their standard is a 0.3 foot candle over ambient lighting. So that's something that could definitely be explored, and that is measured by a light, what is it called?
Sensor.
Some type of light sensor, and it factors that play into determining that level is how big is the sign, and then there's tables that say for how big of the sign you should measure it so many feet back. Then you put your device, and that will give you if it's below or higher than that 0.3. So that is what the ISA is using as a really good standard for everybody, and over 250 different cities have adopted that. So that would be a good foundation if you wanted to go that direction to the signs. And it also comes down to even the sign users don't want an overly bright sign because you lose the effectiveness. So it's in the sign owner's best interest to reduce that brightness because you don't need it to be extremely bright, especially at night. During the day, on the other hand, you do want it bright because you're competing with the sun so much. So I would be more concerned on the evenings. I'm sure that's where you'd get most of your calls from, neighbors,
Yes.
that type of deal. So one thing also our company could help with is we have a display on hand, and we'd be more than happy to set that up and at night show you different ways to control it or different levels. If that were an option you'd like to see, we'd be more than happy to help. It's just kind of vague and broad, but it can be narrowed down.
When you have a digital sign and you control the brightness, do you use nits or foot candles or something else?
There's neither, because that's above everybody's head that uses these. So the manufacturers have made their software based on like percentage, and that percentage is what simplifies the nits and the lumens. So let's just take let's take nits. So I have a sign that is rated for about 10,000 nits. We feel like that's a really good, the sign owners like it, you can see it real well. However, just because a sign is rated for 10,000 nits, it's not ever gonna actually be 10,000 nits because that rating is when it is displayed white full brightness. So no one would want that. White is a combination of red, green, and blue. So all of those, that's when the most energy is being used. So that's how you get your nits. So what I like to compare nits is like I was just telling Pat earlier, it's like a speedometer. So just because your car says it can go 160 miles per hour, It can, but are you ever going to go that fast? And there's also factors that we put into place in the software that you don't want to run that 100% brightness, because all these displays are based on, so LED doesn't go out like a light bulb. It is brightness over time. It's going to reduce its brightness over time, and that's how they go out. That's why you replace them. They last about anywhere from 7 to 12 years is a really good lifespan. And those factors that affect that is your brightness. If you're going to have it on max brightness all day, every day, then you're going to use that display in a shorter lifespan. So even in the settings for that I work on the technical background, I don't even put my clients' signs past 90%, because I don't want them to use their LED up when they don't have to. And then there's also scheduling you can do to where your sign can be off from, like, say, midnight till 4 a.m. or so many hours. There's ordinances or cities that do that. They say you can't have it on from whatever hours. So,
But can you program it to be a certain brightness, a certain, during daylight hours, and I know that's variable throughout the year,
yeah, it's so variable.
to, say, no more than the 5,000 nits that we have here, which is, and we got this, the billboards ordinance that we already have in the sign has this language in it. So we just copied it from digital billboards to digital signs. So that's where we came up with that one. And I think there was some discussion when we adopted it before, but we ended up using that, and we realized that it is something that's hard to enforce. But there's really no way, or not a good way of saying, the maximum this can be is 5,000, but when it gets dark out, it goes down to 750, or 750 during night.
Not really, because then you're getting even into the different types of LED displays. And so their displays are based on resolution, which is based on how many LEDs you have per display. So you might have, it's called pitch. It's the measurement from the center of one pixel to the center of the adjacent pixel. And that distance is usually, industry standard right now is a 16 millimeter. A lot of other ones are like 20. More higher resolution is 10 millimeter. So that's where everything's going to, is the clear picture. But with that is you have a trade-off. So if you want a higher resolution, you're going to have clearer pictures, but your type of LED is physically changing a little bit because it has to be smaller. And that LED doesn't emit as much light as the bigger LED that's used in the 16 millimeters. So
May I interrupt your train of thought?
yeah,
So, riddle me this.
sure.
If nits aren't maybe appropriate, or foot candles, 0.3 over foot candles, may not be appropriate, and I have a couple questions on that. But the other 250 cities that regulate this and use the international standards that you work with every day, how are they making this compliant between day and night if they're not using something like nits or foot candles?
They result back to the software, to where the automatic brightness sensors, your upper limits and your lower limits. And then it fills in based on reading the ambient lighting.
So I guess I pick your brain on these other regulations, if I might, is that, so they're saying that, I don't know, some city west of us is saying that the range is 10% at night and 85% during daylight.
I'd have to reference
are they
what
going
the standard.
or the forms that you reference, some of the resources and templates address those sorts of issues?
I haven't referenced them. I was asked in short notice, so I haven't.
And that's fine. Yeah, I appreciate
It's
that.
something I would have to look into further to know the exact wording. I'm just kind of speaking on a.
Yeah. The reason I wanted to go there for a second is that my experience has been that this gets pretty complicated pretty quick.
Yeah.
And if you have a full moon, or if you have a cloudy day, the sign brightness, there's different between bright day and total solar eclipse day when the
Sure.
it's totally dark. And so I was curious if those templates reference those sort of, the 0.3 foot candles over ambient seems to solve
Yeah.
some of those issues.
That's what I've read so far, as they keep repeating that. So I'm going to make that assumption that seems to be the most quantitative frame of reference. And in further reading, it does do a comparison of nits versus foot candles, which goes back to, and it actually shows the foot candles can be much easily, that's not even a word, sorry, much easier read. So if you wanted to manage it and learn how to do it, you could.
Okay, thank you. I interrupted you, so back to you.
Back to that, if I had a light sensor, whatever.
Yep.
And I have a 10-foot tall sign,
Yep.
am I able to measure
Yes.
being down,
Yep. And there's full tables that show where you'd want to be to measure that with
knowing
the
that
device.
I cannot be right in front of it?
It says you should do right in front of it because that's going to be your most bright placement. If you go to the side, that light's going to dissipate even more.
So you either need a
At the same distance.
bucket truck or climb up in front of the sign.
I'm sorry.
So you either need a bucket truck or you have to climb up in front of the sign.
There's a lot of ground signs that are digital signs also.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
And there would be some, and this gets back to more of the billboards, where you're not going to get anywhere close to that billboard.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And the billboard industry is very much even separate than the on-premise digital signs we're talking about. So they're kind of their own world. Yes, it's similar technology, but that's kind of its own can of worms. What's one other thing I could do or say? My question would be what are the issues of concern and what would be the best solution and on an ongoing management I would say direct your ordinances towards that versus getting into the extra bells and whistles. That is it manageable? Is it how do you regulate some of that extra detail? Is it necessary?
are there really truly any ordinances out there that are, I'll say, truly enforceable without having some number in there that, whether it's, nits or foot candles or whatever, are there good ordinances out there that we can regulate rather than just being, that's
I'd have to look more into it.
That's too bright.
Yeah.
We think you need to tone it down a bit, which we don't want to do. We want something there that,
It's a standard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
just
a
think it
standard,
needs
yeah.
explored more.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Other commissioners, we kind of jumped in with some of these points. Anything else? Eric?
I've got a few questions actually. One, what is the difference between an illumination internal sign and a digital sign?
an internal illuminator would be take a cabinet and with the front of the cabinet is whatever the plexiglass, whatever,
Okay.
and then the light is in that cabinet.
Okay. I understand that. And then my next question is, the way I read this, there's a couple of spots you can put digital signs, animated signs without a permit. Was this sent over to Bellevue or to Offutt for comment at all? Just knowing that they have an airport, a runway, were they given a chance to kind of comment on digital signs and uses around said airport?
I'm gonna. I'm gonna say I have a typo there. Those P's, I would change to an S. I would only want those done with a sign permit. I'm sorry. I was thinking P for permit.
Okay. So what you're saying is that it should be S parentheses B.
Yes.
Okay.
I apologize for that. Like I said, I was thinking P for permit. Wired.
Easy mistake. So that was all that I had.
Any other comments from commissioners, questions?
I don't know if you're able to see. I have a few of the resources I would recommend looking at. I printed off that show a couple pictures that kind of show, like that would be much more visibly legible versus a really bright sign. So, and then it also has the comparison of the foot candles versus nits, and the foot candles are something that's more easily measured.
Is that something you can leave with us?
Yeah. I can even email attachments if you'd like. One other thing too is your 5,000 nits. You're not going to see that during the day. It'll be completely washed out. So I just say we just need to look into it more.
Okay,
Is all.
good. Thank you. Commissioners, any comments?
Couple questions or comments, I guess. First of all, good idea to bring this up. I know there's a sign off of just south of 60th and L Street I go by now, and they've recently mounted one of these on the side of the building. So again, it's not just the digital billboards anymore, it's the personal signs on businesses, which if all we're regulating is billboards so far, this is a gap we need to fill. Secondly, is this a pressing issue? Do we have something coming up that it needs to be addressed, as opposed to would it hurt to hold it over for a month while we figure out maybe the measurement piece of this and how it works with pixels? And again, it sounds rather technical, and I know there's some things we probably need to get addressed from what I'm hearing. But
No, there's no pressing issue on this. It was just something we.
okay.
And I totally agree with you, Mr. Ackley, because I remember our first discussion about billboards. I think, Mr. Jacobson, you were explaining the lumens and everything to us, so obviously it's expanded since we first discussed.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
When it works, right?
Well, and I guess the other thing I would make a comment on that letter C, the last bullet point that ends with reserves the right to further regulate individual signs based on vehicular traffic safety. Do we also need something that would say and proximity to the surrounding development or something? Again, when I think of that sign that's hung on the side of the building on 60th and L, you got houses right next door versus, again, you're not gonna know what's necessarily gonna fit. And it's not, maybe it's just traffic that would make you wanna reserve the right to further regulate?
That came from what was already there as far as the existing C based on vehicular traffic. And I understand what you're saying. The hope is that by dimming them at night, you're preventing that intrusion. And also, if we have a standard to say, it's too bright based on this standard, you need to turn it down, or as opposed to a homeowner, one might think it's too bright, the other one, thinks it's okay. We some standard in there to protect the homeowners or adjacent properties, yes.
Section.
But I do think it needs to
Section
be
B already cover that.
I'm sorry?
Section B already covers that, I believe.
That's true,
Good point.
about glare and
I was focused on the red line, Mr. Perrin. Good job.
Any other comments from commissioners? What are your wishes, commissioners?
I guess question for staff, how long do you think you would need to maybe revisit and study some of the measurement techniques here? Again, it's kind of like buying a TV the way it sounds, depending how tight the pixels are, your brightness are going to differ and all of those things. So there's maybe various standards depending on the type of sign. Is a month enough, or we need a couple months?
why don't we go to the September meeting?
So what's the date specific for that?
The 27th of September.
I'd make a motion that we hold this item over for September 27 Planning Commission meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Behrens. Any additional comment on the motion? Hearing seen none. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Perrin,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Ackley,
Yes.
Ritz, all in favor, motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon, Ms. True, for bringing
Yes.
those things up.
Thanks. Appreciate your input. Thank you.
I'll email Chris all the links and everything.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Our next item on our agenda is a request to amend Article 7, request to approve the 2018 comprehensive plan update by the city of Bellevue, and I understand that the city of Bellevue will request a continuation.
That is true.
Okay. And the continuation is to a month?
The August meeting, 23rd, August 23rd.
Okay, to 8/23.
We did get some late information in from MAPPA regarding the JLU study as far as some additional recommendations, revisions to the comp plan. So we need to put those in as well.
I believe we need a motion and a second to defer it to 8/23. I guess I will make that motion. Defer.
Second.
We have a second?
Ms. Kane?
Ms. Kane? Okay. No additional discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Perrin,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Ackley,
Yes.
Ritz,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carried.
That concludes the public portion of our meeting.